Yeah.
Right. So, what we discussed about in the last session about what are the different commands in reference to the SQL part. So, data manipulation, right? So, data query, right? So, all that we have discussed, data definition language, query translation of query languages, right? So, all these things we have discussed in the previous session. Now, from today onwards, we are going to discuss about how generally queries we have to write, right? So because the query statements, how we are going to extract the queries. So based upon the kind of data what we have taken so far and all, everything we are discussing now from today onwards. Now, if we want to write any kind of queries and all, as you can see here, there is an option we have to create schemas and all, right? So schemas is something which we have to be created in reference to the queries, what is that we want to write. Create a new schema is what something which we have to write. Here you can see there are different options we have. So generally creation of new SQL table is what something which you can see over here. Here we have to write the SQL tabs, all that. At the same time, if you want to write any kind of open script file, okay, because whatever the data we have, data available, right? So if you want to open any kind of employee data or something, right, here you can open it, right? So you can open the script file, right? So encoding the name script file as of now it is not required. So I'm just writing, right? So yeah, I'm just writing it, right? So the script file is what something which we have to write. That script, whatever the script file do you have? What are the different scripts do we have and all everything is what something we can do it. That's it script file. But before we are going to write down the scripts files and all everything, first of all, we have to create a scheme. This is the first thing we have to do. Unless until if you are not writing any script file, all that, generally schemas, unless until if you are not creating any new schemas or something, creating a script files and all everything is not something which will be used of. So here there is an option. First, we have to select a new schema, right? So here you can see create a new schema. Here we have to select the schema, right? So for example, uh, schema 5, okay? This is what generally which I have written, right? So creation of new schema. Creation of schema is what something which we have to do. So here SQL script was successfully applied to the database, okay? Finished, right? So this is how generally, first of all, we have to create the schema. Schema creation is what you can see. So whatever the activities which will be performed on SQL Workbench means Workbench is an editor, as I said earlier. It's a kind of editor where we want to write any kind of scripts and all everything. This is what generally the editor is being used. In this editor, whatever the schemas we have created, everything. So you can see all these here, right? So you can see whatever the schemas we have created, everything you can see, right? So this is where generally all these will be used for, right? Applying changes to schema 5, okay? All these things will be mentioned over here. This is where generally these schemas and all everything were completely used and all that. Next, once we have created a schema, the next thing we need to understand about the kind of stored procedures, because if you want to create any kind of stored procedure for active schema, here we can see there is an option called creation of stored procedure. So wherein this creation of stored procedure, where we have to select the schema, because unless until if you are not creating any kind of schema and all, stores procedures are something which is not something is being used for. So schema is what something which we have to select, right? So we have to select the schema if you want to create any kind of stored procedures. Because stored procedure in an activity where we want to store all the information. Whatever the required information we want to store it. So for that reason, generally the stored procedure is what something which we have, right? So here you can see there are some application of changes which we have made. So, okay, for example, here, if you want to select any kind of character coalitions or something, like if you want to take any characters coalitions, either it can be binary or else everything and all, we have to select it. But whenever we want to write down the queries and all, it's always important for us to select the default character set, because default character set will be taken based on the kind of data what we have given. So whatever the example of data we have given, so based on the example of data, whatever the default character set to be taken and all will be taken by it automatically. That's what generally this character set correlations and all everything are something used for. At the same time, default correlation is what something which will be taken as this. Normally, this is something which normally happens on the schema itself. Okay, this is where generally the schema creation is what something which we have to be created. So active new schema is what something we have to create, is what something we to do. These schemas, we can create n number of schemas because this is nothing to do with SQL files. You can see there are some 3 SQL files which was created by me. One is 10, 11, and 12, right? So 3 different SQL files we have created. Whatever the query statements are we going to write and all everything will be written over here. This is where generally these query statements and all everything are something used in this. So when we are creating these queries and all, especially in SQL, normally we don't select any kind of limit, because don't limit is what something we have to select, because if you have selected this to the rows, because there are number of queries we have to write normally when we are working on to the data side, especially from database designing team, all that there are n number of data, right? So n number of data will be available. When there is n number of data is available, always there is a limit which we have to be mentioned, which normally required for us to mention the limit and all, which is not something something required, which is not something useful of that sort, right? So no limitation of characters and all everything is what is not something which we have to be mentioned. So always important for us to not to make it any kind of limit and all, so that I am just selecting as don't limit. Okay, that's what generally the limiting is what something which we have to be mentioned with. So creation of SQL tabs is what something we have to do with. At the same time, we need to select the schema, whatever the schemas we are creating and all everything. That's what generally we have to create. Here you can see there are 2 schemas I have created. One is schema 1 and second is schema 2. Okay, these are the 2 things which I have created here. Right, so here also we have clear, right? So we have system configurations, you can see, right? So virtual tables and all everything for the tables what we have created, etc. All these things are useful here. Now schema 5 is what we have selected. Here you can see there is an option called table, right? So now first of all what we have to do here, there is an option called creation of table. So creation of table, where we have to create n different tables. Here this is where generally tables are, because schema was created. So once the schema is created, because it can be of any schema, it can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, and number. So once we have created a schema, there are different things. One is tables to be created. This is point number 1. So once the tables was created, these tables want to see. This is what we call it as view stands for. Next is stored procedure. Means stored procedure means if you want to store any kind of data into the existing database and all, this stored procedure is what something which is being used. Next, functions. Whatever the required functions we want to write and all, everything will be written for the functions. Okay, these are the things. And so as of now, again, I'm repeating, whatever the schema we have taken is a number called schema 5. How many schemas we can create? As many schemas we want, we can create it. So there is no limit for schemas to be created, but normally we create somewhere around 5 to 6 schemas. Depends on the size of the project, what is that we are working on, depends on the kind of data, whatever we have taken. How many number of schemas are we going to create will be varied. So schema is what something we have to create. After that, we have to create tables in the schema. Here you can see table, right? Creation of table. Here you can see here. We have to give it table name. Okay. So table name called right. So customer details is what something which I have given. Okay, schema 5. right? So here we need to select this render engine, it's into DB, right? So if there are any comments, we can write down the comments over here. Next, if you want to create any kind of comment names or something like any characters correlations, all these things in context to the column, what is that we are selecting, either it can be a primary key or a binary key. All these details columns has to be mentioned over here. This is what generally this column details and all everything are used here. So columns is what something which we have to be updated. Whatever the required columns do we have. So those column details has to be mentioned in it. This is point number one. Next is indexes, right? So if you want to create any kind of index storage types or something like, so index storage types, all these things has to be updated equally here. Next, if there are any foreign keys we want to mention, right? So because foreign keys are for key identification. So if you want to create any kind of key identification and all, foreign keys is what something which we have to be created. That is foreign key stands for. Next was triggers, because if you want to create any kind of triggers and all that, so before you are going to insert something, right? Okay, for example, this is the trigger point we have to see, because for example, if you want to create any kind of definer from a begin state to an end state and all, this is where generally these triggers and all everything will be used here, right? So customer details or insert details, or before you are going to update something, or after you are going to insert something and all, right? So all these informations has to be mentioned in this triggers, all that. Next was partitioning, because if you want to enable any kind of partitioning in the data, because there is a data which was created by us, wherein whatever the data we have created, that we have to. Yeah. So any right. So sorry. Right. So any partitioning of data we want to do, right? So if you want to enable any kind of partitions and all, this partitioning is what something we do. So why is this partitioning? Partitioning is something which is easy for us to identify. Because if you want to identify any information relating to the tables what we have created, if you want to identify any tables and all everything, partitioning is something required. So partitioning is for easy identification when we are preparing, when we are doing it. So enable partitioning, if you want, we can enable partition. Okay, we can enable the partition and all. So wherein whatever the parameters do we have and all everything is what something we can do it. That is one thing, enabling partitioning and all. So at the same time, there is general options and all, that is all something. So columns is what something which we have created, and we can click on apply. So now here you can see this is where generally, right? So what we do, we have to create schema first. We need to create a table. Whenever we are creating a table and all that, so table name has to be given here. So once we have given a table name, this is what generally all the details you can see, right? So this is what the details you can see over here. Okay, create a table which is called schema 5. Okay, you can listen carefully. Next, whatever the column name was created, okay, table name, sorry, whatever the table name we have created, that's what generally the customer details were there. At the same time, if there is any kind of updations we have made here, okay, here we can see indexes, foreign keys, triggers, all that. We can see all that. So if there is any information which is to be updated over in this, here we can see the updations. Otherwise, the same schema 5 details and all everything can be mentioned in it as it is. So click on apply. So once there is an information we are mentioning and all, so if there are any execute SQL statements and all everything, this is where generally we have to mention these in the database part. That's what generally database creation is what something we have to do. So the reason why here you can see there is a connection of database which we have already done. Here you can see there is an option called new connection, right? So new connection of database which is already created. So when we are applying these schemas and all, it's always important for us to identify what are the schemas we have created here. So if you want to create a schema, we have to create a table here. So whenever we are creating a table, we have to apply that. If you want to apply the scripts files onto the database, make sure we need to have a script files and all everything into the database. This is where generally scripting came into existence. Okay. So scripting is what something relating to that stuff. Okay. I hope you understood. Scripting is what something which we have to be make it. So now if you want to make the scripting and all, make sure you need to have a proper connecting of the database, which we have already connected. So tables is what something which we have to create. Next, we need to see an option for creating a view, right? So if you want to see a new view and all, here you can see create view. New view is what something which we have created, okay? So as AS1 is what something which we have created as a view, right? So if you want to open the script file from the editor and all everything, we can see it, because make sure, as I told you, there is an editor which we are running. We have to run the SQL scripting and all. So unless until if you are not writing the SQL scripting and all, this view editors and all everything are something which we have to be reverted here, right? So this is where, so generally these tables we have to create. At the same time, whatever the views do we have and all everything should also be created in this. Next, there is the next option is called stored procedure. Here you can see creation of stored procedure here. Means whatever the new procedure are we going to create, right? So any stored new procedures we are creating and all. So this is where generally this begin and ending and all stored procedures are something which is used. This is where generally stored procedures and all everything were coming into existence. Stored procedures. Next is functions. Means if you want to create any kind of functions also, we can create new functions, whatever the required functions we want to create. All the functions can be created. This is where generally this creation of functions and all everything were coming into existence. So when we want to query any kind of data, whenever we want to write some SQL scripting files and all, it's always important for us to learn about schema creation. This is where generally schemas are something useful. That's the reason why schema is always important. How many number of schemas are we going to create? It is nothing to do with number. But end of the day, schema creation is what something which we have to be known with. Schema creation is what something we have to be updated in the existing ones. Now, if you want to write any kind of scripting, if you want to update any kind of data, so first and foremost thing being a analysis team, right? So being into data analysis when we are working on, especially on SQL, all that. So schema creation is what something which we have to be performed this way. Is it clear to everyone? Understood or not?
Yes.
Clear? Again, I'm repeating, if you want to create any kind of scripts files and all everything to start with, creation of schema is what something which we have to do. That's what we have done so far. Okay, creation of schemas is what something which we have to be created with. So creation of tables and all everything, that is different, right? So because creation of tables anyway, I told you, because for every schema, there are different tables we have. Table creation has to be mentioned it. If there is any foreign keys, we have to be mentioned. That also can be mentioned in this. Foreign keys or triggers or partitionings. All these details has to be updated here. At the same time, if there is any views or stored procedures which has to be updated into the existing schema, that also can be created and that also can be mentioned in this existing database. This is how generally schema creation is what something we have to do initially to start it with. So once the schema creation is done, the next how we have to extract the data from the external, because here we can see there is two options you can see over here. So when you go for administration here, you can see one is about data export. Means you are exporting the data from existing thing. Let's say, for example, there is a schema where all the data will be available. If you want to export the data and all everything, here you can export the data. So data exportation we don't do, but data import is what something which we have to be performed with. Means if you want to import the data from the desk and all, make sure we have to select what from where we are selecting the data and all everything is what something which we have to be mentioned. So this is where generally this data import or restore procedures and all everything is what something which we have to be added to the existing table. This is what something which we have to be performed. Whenever we are working on SQL, this is what something which we have to be performed. This is what generally schema creations are something which we have to do. So once the schema creation, once the table of schemas creation, table creation schemas, after the table creation, these tables are created and all. Next, we need to know about how to write scripts, right? So scripting is what something. So now if you want to write the script, first of all, we have to update the data. Because we have to update the data, we have to store the data into the database. And whenever we have stored the data into the database and all, from there onwards, querying of statements and all everything is what something we have to write. And this is all something which we are doing from tomorrow onwards. This is the first thing, because if you want to write scripts, first of all, creation of schemas, creation of tables, this is the first thing which you need to know. That's what today we have discussed. Next, knowing about scripts and queries and all everything that we are going to discuss in tomorrow session. Is it clear to everyone? Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Is it clear or not?
Yeah. So the data we're importing, what kind of data?
Usually it will be in CSV data. This is SQL data we have. Excel data will be having. I'll show you.
Okay.
I think last time I have shown you the data, right? So this is how it is. Excel data. Normally Excel data will be, because data will be in CSV format. This is the data.
Okay, got it.
Employee sample data.
Mhm.
This is how generally data looks like, right? So this is these are all we call it as data sets. We normally call these as data sets. So this is the complete data. So this data, because normally this data we'll be extracting from the external resources. From external resources, we have to extract where the external resources are. These external resources will be there in the system. What are the systems we have? So there the external resources will be there. From the external resources and all, this data has to be extracted first. That is the first thing which we have to be done. So data extraction, I think last time also I have shown you. I think how to extract the data. I think day before the session or sometime I have shown that. I think if you believe I have shown the, again, anyway, I'll show you again. So import the data is what something we have to do. So once importation of data and all, whatever the queries we wants to write and all everything will be written. So normally this is a data will be in a format of CSV. This is all comes under CSV format, Excel data. These are all we call it as data sets. We call it as name is that. Data sets is what some name which normally we use it. So it can be of any data. Okay, it can be customer data, it can be employees data, it can be student data, it can be account details data, customer data, right? So data can be in any thing. Okay, that is different.
Got it. Thank you.
Clear? Understood?
Yes, sir.
Any questions? Right, guys? So we'll discuss about the rest in tomorrow session. Okay then. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Thank you.
Right.